Okay, Kum Len and Ablat Gemara. We are up to Daf Kuf Amid Aleph. We're talking about over here with the Bezdin. We learned before if the widow herself, takes a larger property than she's entitled to, then the entire, it doesn't matter how minuscule the amount is, the entire deal falls off. But if it's the Dayanim, up to a sixth, everyone agrees. If they, undersold it by under a sixth, everyone agrees the sale is valid. If it's exactly a sixth, the Tanakama says that the sale is invalid, and Hashem Gurul says no, it's still valid because im kain ma koyach bezn yafer, have to have extra powers. Everyone agrees, however, if they put it out to auction, they put out a letter document for auction, then that's the market value, and everyone agrees it's a valid sale. And then we discussed the status of the shliach of bezin. We had a machlekes where the shliach bezin has the same status as dayanim. That if he makes a mistake up to a sixth is valid, not like an almana that even makes a mistake for one pruta, the whole deal unravels. And the other opinion is Shmuel Bisna says that no, that she has a shliach dim almana because he's a lone person and it's possible to make a mistake. Not like a bezin that's a group of people, so therefore it's not really an error. So we're up to the Gemara here in the first wide line. Actually, the line above the first wide line. 2 lines above. The halacha is like the Chachamim, not like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. So if the bezin made a mistake of a sixth, ordinarily for ordinary people, we say that the deal remains, but you have to return the oino, that extra amount. But the Tanakama said when it comes to a bezin, the deal unravels. Says the Gemara, but less later Nachman made this ruling. Doesn't he agree with the principle Makoyach Bezin Yafa, that when Bezin puts a stamp on it, it's much more powerful, much more authoritative than an ordinary person, so therefore the deal should remain. And how do I know that Nachman agrees with that principle? Because one of Nachman Mishmol, we're learning more Kedusha, Nachman saying Mishmol. Yishaimim Shebo Lachlik Benichse Avir. You have orphans who wanted to divide the estate of their father. So how can they're all underage? Is Bezdin Mamidin Lehena Patrufis? Bezdin sets up these executives of the state, and they take care of it. And and each one they choose for them a what they think is most appropriate for their orphan. Machlekes Rishonim takes it on the bottom whether it's done through a lottery. Others say the word boirin sounds like it's negotiated, and others say it's just purely a lottery. Once the kids grow up, and now they can think for themselves. This opinion says they can protest, say we're not happy with whatever it is. Nachman says no. Once they grow up, it's too late. They're stuck with the property, whatever property the executive Petrufus chose for them. That's what they have to remain with. And the logic he uses because you can't otherwise. What was the point of the whole exercise? Business authority is no better than anybody else's. They appointed this executive, and therefore the administrator, and this administrator therefore chose for them, and that's what it remains. So Nachman doesn't agree with that principle. Like Kashi, you can't compare the two. Over there, in the case of the Bezin didn't make a mistake. They came to the conclusion that this property is good for this orphan. It wasn't an error, and therefore you can't fault them, and that judgment remains. On the other hand, by us, we're talking about the Bezin, undersold the property. That's an error, and therefore, why should Bezin's authority be that much stronger? It's a mistake. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. You're telling me in the case of the orphans, there's no error. So what do you mean they grow up, they're going to protest? What are they going to protest about? There's nothing wrong. So what are they going to make? You're saying, they did make a mistake here. There's no mistake here. Then what in the world are they protesting? It says the size. For example, one of these same inherited a property from his grandfather through his mother's side. On the west side of this property, so he would like to be close to the new properties that abuts his other property. That's good. So that's what he's protesting. So not that there was an error made by the Dayanim, but things changed, circumstances changed, or for convenience, he would like to have them, together, joined together. That's what he can protest. And the Nachman says, too bad. The Bezin made a decision and remains. Rabbi came along, he said, there's a story, but also Rebbe actually carried out the words of the Chachamim, which is what? That the Bezin made a mistake of a sixth, and therefore they unwound this whole deal. Amalefonov Parta Benoisha Rabbeloza ben Parta. So Parta came along, who was the son of Rabbeloza, who was the son of Parta, who was Ben Benoisha Parta Godel. And the way Taisha learns is that this very son was a grandson. This Parta then is a grandson of Parta Hagodol, the famous Parta. And he said, if you're going to unravel this deal, then what makes Bezin special? Knows he used the swara of Rosh Gamliel. The Hechze Rebbe is a mice, and Rebbe reversed his final judgment. That's one version. He actually reversed it. Rabdimi tells the same story, but one slightly different. That is, Rebbe hasn't yet passed judgment. He wanted to. He was inclined to. The story he intended to. The part told him, how can you go down this track of the Hanakama? What about a Shimon Lil? You got to give more authority to the Bezin. So he did not proceed with that psak. So what's the argument with these two, I guess, variations of the story? This is the argument. The first one says he actually paskined, but then he reversed his psak. Now, once a dying paskins, he can't reverse his psak unless it's a Torah Mishnah. It's an open Mishnah, and therefore his psak is meaningless. And therefore, it's an open Mishnah of Shimon ben Gamliel who says clearly that Im Kei Makoy Bezin Yafa is an open psak. So Rebbe made a mistake in the psak. Now, Allah should be like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. And therefore, Rebbe reversed the psak. But the other one says, Ein the other one says, no. Even once a dayan paskas, he cannot reverse the psak, even if it flies in the face of a Mishnah. Doesn't matter. But yet the problem is in Rosh Head, and everyone says there that Tov Mishnah if you make a mistake against an open Mishnah, it's not a psak. And here we see there's a machlekes. You must say, right, light. There's no machlekes. Everyone agrees, of course, if you paskin against an open Mishnah, you reverse it because it's not really psak. Just argue what actually happened. That's all. Rabbi says, Amalta, if let's say the almana has the right to sell properties to be able to pay for her mezainis or ksuvim, so does the Bezdin. What happens if an error happened? Achrayis, who takes responsibility? Or what happened on error happened? What happens if the field then gets seized from the purchaser by somebody who claimed that the field was stolen by these kids' father, or something to that effect? Or a lender comes along and claims and takes it from the purchaser. Who is responsible to reimburse the purchaser? The widow or the Bezdin who sold it directly to this purchaser, or does it go back to the orphans, to the state? So I'm going to base a amount if a money the sold achrayis ayasme, the responsibility, liability goes back to the orphan, to their estate. Bezdin the zovim, and the same thing with Bezdin the Bezdin that sold is achrayis ayasme, the responsibility goes back to the same. So you want to of course. Just because the almana sold it, they're just acting on behalf of the Yisayim. If it eventually gets taken from the purchaser, the purchaser goes back to the estate, to the Yisayim. What's a chiddush? I say, right, almana leitzichle, there's no chiddush involved in the It's obvious. The chiddush is by a bezdin. I would have thought that maybe bezdin. What would I have thought? I would have thought that kol the zabin mebei dina adaited enough for the kol zabin. That Bezdin generally, when they sell, they make an auction, and therefore the buyer, when he went ahead and he bought it, he was convinced that there was nobody is going to put on any claims. When you make an announcement, a public auction, if there was somebody who believed that this property belonged to him, he would have come forward and said to the Bezdin, "Hey, what are you doing?" So therefore, we would have thought that when the buyer bought it, he was Michael the guarantee. What did he guarantee for? Bezdin sold it. There's no question that this is 100% perfect, because if anybody would have complained or come out of the woodwork and stake the claim. So therefore, perhaps it's as if the buyer was Michael said, "I need the guarantee." Kamashla, no. Even so, there's a guarantee there, and you can go back to the same. That's a chiddush. Shimon Gilel says that Bezdin makes an error. Nevertheless, the error is the sale is a valid sale, because otherwise, in came mak koyach Bezdin yafta. The question is, how far do we take it? How far do we take it? By normally it's a sixth, but an ordinary person, if it's more than a sixth, the whole deal unravels. What about when it comes to Bezdin? Says the Gemara had come to where? Add powder up to half the value. So up to half the numbers, double the value, it's still considered a sale. Bezdin took a field that was worth $200 and sold it for $100, undersold it. Or they took a $100 field and sold it for $200. Where there the buyer was cheated. Nevertheless, Michron Kaim, the sale remains. Why? Because they can be taken up to them. Omar Amema says the Mashmed Rabbi Yosef. Now there's an argument which says apalgo means literally apalgo or it means ad infinitum. There is no cap. Like the last time Machlek gives a showing how it works. Omar Amema says Mashmed Rabbi Yosef Bezdin shemochru b'lo hachraza. If a bezin is supposed to sell by making a public auction, what if bezin sold it without making that achraza? Nasu kimisha tov with Mishnah. It's as if they passed a judgment which is against an open Mishnah, the chayzin, and therefore the entire process has to start all over again. What do you mean nasu? It's as if vadaito. Surely they made a mistake. Nasu means we make believe we treat it as if they made a mistake. They did make a mistake. It's not. Isn't there a clear Mishnah where it says Shema Yisaymin that when you assess the properties of Yisaymin, if you have to sell it to reimburse, let's say there's interest eating away at the property, so they sell that in order to reimburse the lender. Is shleishim yen. For 30 days, you go ahead and you make it public announcements. For Shuma Hegdish, if you're selling it on behalf of Hegdish, it's 6 days. And how's it work? Every day, every morning, every evening, they go ahead, for the workers going to work so that they can remind the owner, or they're going home and the way home. So clearly it says that you have to make a close in the Mishnah. So it's not as if they made a mistake. They actually did make a mistake. So they were no. From there, I would have thought, if from there, I would have thought that's only by a shliach. Over there, it's talking about if somebody is acting on behalf of a bezin. So this is a protocol. You have to make public announcements, 30 days or 60 days of the bezdin. But the bezdin themselves, how do I know the bezdin themselves actually also have to go through a hachraza process? Maybe they can just outright sell it to Mashalon, and therefore it comes to teach you. It's as if they made a mistake, because it's not clear in this enunciate in this mission. It says in our Mishnah, Shuma the Yoni, when the Yoni make a judgment, if they undersold it by a sixth, or oversold it by a sixth, they increase the price, which means they're cheating the buyer. Michram bottle, the sale is bottle, but it sounds like how shava b'shava. What about if it would have been equal? Michram kaim, the sale would have been all right. Now we're going to assume that there was no auction here. My lab, the loy achis. It's talking about there was no auction here, and yet we're saying that the sale is a valid sale. So clearly, that a bezin does not have to go through the process of an auction. So only if they made an error, then we have this machlekes. What do you do? Says the Gemara, loy no, but achis. Talking about there was an auction. The Gemara, the sefer, but achis. Since the later on in the sefer talks about if they made an announcement, they made an igeres. It says in the sefer they put out this auction letter. Igeres Bekoides, then the sale remains. Obviously, till now we're talking about there was no auction. But Achis Haviresh Lach. It turns to say everyone agrees that if they put out, if they made an auction, everyone agrees that the sale remains. The sale remains. Even the Tanakam agrees to that. So when we say in the beginning of the Mishnah that the sale falls apart, obviously there was no auction, and yet, but if he didn't cheat anybody, if they sold the proper value, it would have been a good sale. So we see that if a bezin did not go through the correct process, nevertheless, it's a valid sale. It's a valid sale. It's a question on Meimar. Says the Gemara, we're talking about there was no announcement. There was no announcement. How come talk in the beginning of the Mishnah? It's a valid sale. Well, like Kasha, certain items that need to be brought to auction. Those items that the bezin does not bring it to auction, it's not a sale. And in the beginning of our Mishnah here, where it says that the sale remains a sale if he didn't cheat, he didn't make any error in the price, is bidvarim she'ein machrizin alein. Items that do not generally go to the auction, to the hammer. Which items don't go to the auction, and why not? The following things that don't go to auction. Number one is avodim. We'll see in a minute why not. Slaves, metallic, portable items, and starters and documents. You sell your documents. Avodim, what's the reason? Shema Yishmu, the avodim here, that their master is selling them, and they like this staying with their master. They don't trust anybody else. Then they'll flee. You're encouraging them to flee. Metalclean starters, they were worried. If they know it's for sale, it might get stolen. What happens? A lot of people come to check the merchandise before the auction, and you are opening up for perhaps a robbery. So therefore, these items which are easily stolen, we don't put up for public auction. So that's at the beginning of the Mishnah. The taka was not an announcement, but they did not require an announcement. Here it's talking about there are certain times certain occasions that we don't, sometimes we have plenty of time up our sleeve, so therefore we do the process 30 days, 6 days. Sometimes where it's a matter of urgency, we don't have any time. We don't make any public auctions because we need the sale quickly. For example, as we had a few days ago, the Amin said, when it comes to pay off the taxes, the head tax for orphans, all the mezainet to feed a woman, she needs to live, all the quota to bury her, we don't want the body to lie around. In these cases, we sell without an auction, but we need to sell straight away. Quick sale, a fire sale, but that's how it is. So again, there was no auction at the beginning of the Mishnah, and that's why the sale is a valid sale. The only problem there is that you did not get it the right price. Not every region do they actually go through this process. Always. They never made public auctions. Okay, so that's what the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about, a place where they don't make auctions. They thought the reason is maybe everyone there knows how to appraise things. They don't have to go to an auction. Everyone knows the true value. You don't need a proper value. You don't need a professional guy. No, I understand. You know why they didn't make auctions? Because people would say, and this is an interesting debate, if a bank seizes somebody's property and they sell it at an auction, and you buying it for a fire sale price, a big discount, did you do the right thing or the wrong thing? Some people say you did the right thing because basically you paid back most of his loan and you saved it. Others say you did the wrong thing because you bought on the cheshbon of this person who's just taking a big loss, and you bought his house underneath him. You're like call him a chazer or something. People would accuse you that you're a mean-spirited person, that you buy from people who are never underprivileged or people who are in trouble, and you bought their property on a big discount. So people look at them in a negative way, and in other places they say, no, you're helping them out. You're converting it to money so they can pay off his debts. Interesting debate. When it comes to the portable items, we assess the value and we sell them straight away. Chizus agrees. He says you have to bring it to the marketplace and see there, because there'll be many more buyers, then you get a better price. But there's no argument. How to make your sukkah if the day, because Mondays and Thursdays were the market day, or if the day of the sukkah is, Rashi learns talking about time, others learn they're talking about distance physically where the marketplace is. So if it's right next to it or it's the following day, okay, you can wait. But if it's not the following day, you have to wait a while. No, then you don't wait for the marketplace. Rav Kahana, this is an interesting hat by him. He was mining the beer of Rav Mesharshe bar Chilkoi, Rav Mesharshe, the son of Chilkoi, Yasmin, who was an orphan underage. Now, was he called Rav Mesharshe and still a Yassim, or we're saying now he's Rav Mesharshe, but he once was a Yassim? And Shehiyah ad Rigla, and he had to sell the converted cash, but he decided to wait until Yom Tov. Why till Yom Tov? Somebody said, "I'll be enough of even though waiting so long might turn a little bit sour and won't be as fresh. Nevertheless, I'll get much better price for it because there'll be so many more buyers, so many more takers." And Yom Tov time, people like to take a Be'er Seva Chaim. So therefore, we'll do it. We'll wait. Ravina had by him, he was mining wine of Ravina Zute, of I guess a nephew of his who had the same name, Barachte, his nephew, his sister's son. He also had his own wine. And he was taking it to a place called Sichrei to sell. Ravashi went to Ravashi. He wanted to know whether he can bring his can I take my nephew's wine with me? Because what's the problem? I'm taking a little risk because I'm taking it by boat, and it could be the boat will capsize. Am I allowed to put am I allowed to put the items of I guess of a yasim and put in a risk? So he told him, Zil. You guess, no problem. Since you took a risk with your own items, you now take a risk with your same that you wouldn't do for yourself. But if you're taking the risk yourself, you're transporting the wine by this boat, so definitely you can take the same with you. Mishnah. Hammam Enes, a girl who got married underage by her brothers or by siblings or by her mother, and therefore up to the age of 12 she could walk out. Hash, and when she walks out like never married. Hashnia, a woman that is forbidden to you midrabanan, your grandmother, mother, and all that kind, all those names we had in Yavamas. A shnia, an island is, or a woman that's barren, like a ram, can't have any children. Ein lehen ksuva. None of them have a ksuva. Why Amena doesn't have a ksuva is because she walked out. Why? What would you give her a ksuva? A shniya doesn't have a ksuva because it penalizes her. You should never have married her, but penalize both. They both did the wrong thing. Not only she did the wrong thing, he did the wrong thing. And now with a shniya, the children are kosher. So we are convinced that it's more her, I guess, seducing him or inducing him to marry her than he inducing her. And we'll talk about it later. And island is, because the whole thing is based on an error. Nor of the late Pedis. Rashi has two pshatim what Pedis is. Either Pedis is that after she walks out, he doesn't have to pay, because she brought in nichse meloig. These properties that still belong to her, but he works at it and he gets the dividends. And let's say she walks out and she says, pay me back for all those dividends you took. He doesn't have to pay it back at all. Or pay this means that part of the deal we said the arrangement was that they have to support each other, that he has to redeem her in case she gets taken captive, and this is in the place he gets the nichse meloig, he gets the dividends of the nichse meloig, and in return he has to take care of her if she gets taken captive. But in this case, if she gets taken captive, he does not have to redeem her at all in the case of me and all that. Why? Because that's a Tanai Ksuva, and since the Tanai Ksuva is part of the Ksuva, and the Ksuva itself we just said doesn't exist, so therefore there's no Tanai Ksuva. The loy mezainas, he does not have to take care of them. When we say loy mezainas, doesn't mean of course while they're married he has to take care of them. It's a Tanai Ksuva, so it falls away, and that's talking about after. For example, when he doesn't take care of her while they're married, he has to take care of her. There's talking about the husband. Ignore will say later. The husband went overseas and she went ahead and borrowed money from somebody to be able to live. And then the husband comes back. He's not responsible to pay back that loan. Because if she's in mine afterwards, he doesn't have to pay retrospectively for that loan. The husband says, not my wife anymore. The beloya is, let's say she brings in, there's either nichse meloig or nichse basel, either nichse meloig, which are hers and he gets a dividend, or nichse basel, which basically are his because he takes full responsibility, and if it goes up and down the price, it's all to his benefits, so like it's his. If let's say it rotted over time, all you have left is tatters, nevertheless she does not take it back with her. If the things are still in existence, she takes back her nichse meloig, but the beloya she doesn't take back. What happens? If he knew from the beginning, from the start, that she was an islandess and he married her, then of course he has to look silver. What about Ammanik and God? People who are forbidden to marry each other from the Torah. Ammanik and God, Grusha, Chalutza, Kanhedya. What about divorcee or Chalutza? There's a machlekes regarding Chalutza, that's only the Rabbanan, we'll talk about later. Kanhedya, or a Mamzeres, Unasinul Yisrael, or a Mamzed. These are all forbidden from the Torah. Or Basi Son Mamzeres. In all these cases, Yesh Lok Suva. There is a Ksuva here. Why? Because there's no reason for the Rabbanan to penalize anybody, because this is a Mahatayda. And furthermore, the child that's born from this union is a pasul or a cholol, and therefore we believe that that she does not induce him to do this because she knows the repercussions. It's rather he that convinces her, and therefore we're going to penalize him that he must give her a ksuva. This is a penalty that he must give her a ksuva, even though they're living illicitly, because we believe it's more him than her. Rav Tani, when it comes to Rav learns Tana Yaitz beget Ein L'Ksuva. He holds that even though, let's say, she wasn't Memayin, she got married too young, but instead of being Memayin, you decide to sever the ties, and you gave her a divorce. She doesn't have a Ksuva because it's not considered married until she's Bas Mitzvah. Ein L'Ksuva. There is no Ksuva whatsoever. The Chosh came Mamena. Surely, if she walked out, she forfeits a Ksuva. Shmuel disagrees. He says Mamena is in a Ksuva. That our Mishnah means literally a Mamenes. But Yaitza beget, but he divorced her, then surely Yesh Ksuva, he's entitled to Ksuva because they were married. Till he divorced her, they were married. But other Shmuel Tamei, Shmuel is consistent with his view. The Amar Shmuel, Mam Enes, if she walks out, then Ein Lo Ksuva, she forfeits a Ksuva. But Yaitza beget, if he is the one who severs the ties, then Yesh Ksuva, she has a Ksuva. Mam Ennis, if she walks out like she's never married, so she's allowed to marry her husband's brother because she was never married to her husband. She can marry a kohen. She was never a married woman. Yoitza beget, but if she was divorced by her husband at the age of 10, she was divorced, and she was only married with her rabbanon because her mother or siblings married her off. Then, but the fact is, she was rabbanon. At least she was married. She can no longer live with her husband's brothers, and she's disqualified from marrying a kohen because she's like a divorcee. Mam Enes, and a girl who walks out, if you give a divorce to a woman, you have to wait 3 months to determine whether a future child is from the original husband, the second husband. Now, even though she's under 12 years old, so there's no chance of no prospects of her becoming pregnant. Nevertheless, all the rules are uniform. We don't, bend the rules. But if she was never married, then you don't have to wait 3 months. Or the Yaitse Beget, if she was divorced, then she has to wait 3 months. Says the Gemara, what's the Chiddush of Shmuel? Tanina is actually a Mishnah. Kula, we learned all of this. Hamam enes beish, if she walks out on her husband who mutter bekrevisel, he mutter is bekrevov. She's allowed to marry his relatives. He's allowed to marry her relatives. They were never married. But like possible, she can marry a kohen. She's never married. Nasol again, if he gave her a divorce, who also bekrevisel? Midrabanan, she was considered married, so do a divorce now. She cannot marry his relatives. He cannot marry hers. He has sort of bekrevov. She cannot marry his. Upaslam menakuna. So what Shmuel is saying is a Mefesh Mishnah. In fact, how can Rav argue? So Rav will learn that this Mishnah here argues with our Mishnah here. Because our Mishnah here clearly says only a Mamenes has no ksub. So Rav takes it literally, only Mamenes, but if there was a divorce, she doesn't get a ksub. So the Gemara, the Chiddush here is the one case the Mishnah omits. The Chiddush is whether you have to wait 3 months or not. The Loit Tanan, it does not mention. Mamenes does not have to wait 3 months before she gets remarried, but if she received the get, she does. Says the Gemara, let's just go through 2 dafs. Let's say there's an argument Tanoi. Rabbi says, Ein Maisik Tana Klum. Rabbi says that the activities of a Tana are absolutely meaningless. Therefore, the husband is not entitled to any findings because they're not really married. And her earnings does not go to the husband. Does not entitled to annul her nedarim. She doesn't inherit if she dies. If he's a kohen, he's not allowed to be metameter. She's not considered his wife. The only thing that she's considered, as far as how strong is the relationship, only as far that she has to do a mian and walk out. So clearly, this first opinion of Lezer holds that she's not married. If she was married by a sibling, she's not considered a wife. And Rabbi Shua says, "Ma'aseh Tana Klum." Yes, it is considered her activities are meaningful. Or by the Zakim so all the entitlements of the relationship in husband and wife is over here as well. Ma'aseh there, her earnings, so far today you can annul dorim, le'yosha, you can inherit her. Umetamela, and if he's a kohen, he's metamet her. Klal shadavar hadikish l'chol the only leniency here is doesn't need a divorce. She can just walk out at the age of up to the age of 12. So Lema, it doesn't seem clear. Rab the Amar Karabeleza. Rab was like Karabeleza that she's never considered married until she reaches 12. And if she's married by her siblings or mother, Shmuel, they is considered married. No. Elibra is clear. You're right. Rav is definitely like Rabbi Lezer, who says that they're not considered married. But even in Rabbi Shua, Rav can conform with Rabbi Shua. How? Ki pligi el liba Rabbi Shua. The argument of Rav and Shmuel was only within the opinion of Rabbi Shua. Shmuel says, I hold like Rabbi Shua. They consider married, and therefore all the dinim apply, and so on. Can I marry her brothers, his brothers, and so on. But Rav says, no. At kan like look at all the examples Rabbi Shua gave, or all the examples. All the benefits that normally go from her to him do not do apply. But the benefits that go from him to her, that he has to take her captive, that he has to provide for her, even Rabbi Shua's Maida says Rav that they don't exist because they're not really married. So that's the machlekes within Rabbi Shua's opinion itself. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll continue tomorrow night.